Hi everyone. Today I want to tell you the story about Inanna's Descent. It's one of the earliest, in fact, it's the earliest epic poem. So before Homer's Iliad, before the Odyssey, we have Inanna's Descent, which is an Akkadian myth and story. It's also a poem. It's also a chant. I'm going to be reading you excerpts from Inanna's Descent from an Oxford translation, and you're going to see like how much of a chant it is and like incantation. It's meant to be repeated, and it's almost a form of prayer. As you know, I'm Stephanie, and I am known on TikTok, it's classic stuff, for being outspoken on all things related to spirituality. I'm inquisitive, I interrogate, I question, because I've been in that spiritual world for a while. I'm also an academic, former PhD candidate, and I question things. I really like to question things. And the reason why I want to spend some time on Inanna's Descent is because it's very popular in the spiritual space. A lot of folks use it as an example and a reference for shadow work. How many times have we heard of shadow work? All of a sudden, it's just boomed as a concept, and everyone wants to talk about shadow work. And you have shadow work coaches there to help you through your shadows. So as you know me, I'm here to ask questions. And I'm like, okay, what is the hype around shadow work? So let's go back to the origins of the story that is often used as a reference point for shadow work. And that's Inanna's Descent. So this is going to be part of a YouTube series, and this is part one. And in this part one, I'm going to tell you the story. We're going to go over it. We're going to recount it. I'm going to read parts of it. We're going to dive into it and really inhabit that text. And in future videos, I'll follow up on the themes. We're going to explore the thematics, the significance for today, and really see if this whole shadow work thing holds up. Hint, I have some alternative interpretations. Not that we're discarding shadow work, but I think there's a lot more to the text that doesn't get discussed. And you know me, it's all about going back to the origins of the text. Let's do the work together and let's investigate. So grab a cup of tea, relax. Think of this as a bedtime story or a nap story or just a chill, like time to chill. There's a time to think, and there's a time to reflect, and there's a time to absorb. So I want us to get into the mood of listening to the story, and I'm going to do my best to do like a retelling and really get us to live in that moment of Inanna's Descent. So first of all, who is Inanna? She is a really powerful goddess. She is a goddess of fertility, goddess of she rules life. She rules life on earth in the Mesopotamian pantheon. But she's also a very scary warrior. And so when folks went to war, they would honor Inanna as well. And just FYI, the Sumerian term for Inanna is Ishtar. Ishtar is how I grew up knowing her. My dad used to tell us stories of Gilgamesh, the Epic of Gilgamesh, and Enkidu, and Ishtar was an important part of that story. Maybe one day I'll also do a retelling of Gilgamesh. So Inanna, Ishtar, we're talking about the same person. So she's very, very, she inspires a lot of fear in people. She's not just like this manicured femininity. Part of her femininity is her ability to go to war and to really decide of the fate of warriors. And she was known to dress up before she went to war. She loved makeup and enhancing her appearance with clothes and jewels and, mascara and oils and all these things. And that was part of her process. So in Inanna's Descent, which is a story that was written in cuneiform, because that was the Mesopotamian alphabet, cuneiform. It was written on a tablet, so obviously a lot of pieces have gone missing. And it was deciphered in the 19th century. So Inanna is attending the funeral rites of the bull of heaven. He's part of like the deities. She dresses up. She starts wearing all these jewels, a turban, a wig, and she takes her assistant / minister, like she gets this person, has different appellations, different names, and different storytellings, versions of the story. But anyway, this is someone who would have been like her assistant. And she pulls her assistant aside and she says, hey, I'm going into the underworld. If something happens to me and I don't come back, these are some instructions that you're going to have to follow. The first thing that she wants her assistant to do, and her assistant's name is Nikubura. She tells her assistant, like, first you need to lacerate yourself. You need to be sad for me. You need to mourn for me. You need to hit yourself. I want you to really like go hard on mourning for me. I want you to wear poor people's garments and like torn up garments. And in that state, I want you to go to a series of gods and tell them, Inanna is dying in the underworld. Please help her. So this is a passage from the story. And she tells her, on this day, I will descend into the underworld. When I have arrived in the underworld, make a lament for me on the ruined mounds. Beat the drum for me in the sanctuary. Make the rounds of the houses of the gods for me. Lacerate your eyes for me. Lacerate your nose for me. Lacerate your ears for me in public. In private, lacerate your buttocks for me. Like a pauper, clothe yourself in a single garment and all alone, set your foot in the Ikur, the house of Enlil. So Enlil is a god. And so she tells her minister, she tells Nikubura, when you have entered the house of Enlil, lament before Enlil and say, Father Enlil, don't let anyone kill your daughter in the underworld. Don't let your precious metal be alloyed there with the dirt of the underworld, etc., etc. Don't let young lady Inanna be killed in the underworld. If Enlil does not help you in this matter, go to Urim, the house of Nana. Lament before Nana and say, Father Nana, don't let anyone kill your daughter in the underworld. And so on and so forth. So she gives her assistant a bunch of instructions saying, as soon as I get into the underworld, you have to start operating the set of motions. So it's very clear to her sister, Ereshkigal, who rules the underworld, that Inanna's not actually just going for the rights. She's going for conquest. Inanna is very ambitious. She's thirsty. She has set her eyes on the underworld in this situation, and she's dressed for battle. She's wearing all these things. So she's wearing 7 elements that are all each powerful in their own right. So she took the 7 divine powers. She collected the divine powers and grasped them in her hand. With the good divine powers, she went on her way. She put a turban, headgear for the open country, on her head, so she covers her head. She took a wig for her forehead, so she covers her forehead. She hung small lapis lazuli beads around her neck, so even her neck is protected. She placed twin egg-shaped beads on her breast. She covered her body with a pala dress, the garment of ladyship. She placed mascara, which is called Let a Man Come, Let Him Come, on her eyes. It's like her seduction mascara. It would be funny if like Yves Saint Laurent called her mascara like Let a Man Come. She pulled the pectoral, so she wore like a plated thing on her chest, a pectoral, which is called Come Man Come. So it's all of the art of seduction, but it's the art of seduction for the purpose of conquest. She placed a golden ring on her hand. She held the lapis lazuli measuring rod and measuring line in her hand. So she goes in with a scepter. So you can see how Ereshkigal's observing this whole situation from the underworld, and she's like, what's my sister up to? Like, why is she coming in with all these divine powers in the form of these accessories, all dressed up? My sister's up to something weird. And indeed, she is kind of up to something weird, because she's telling her assistant, her vizier, her minister, if I die, you got to set this plan in motion. Because Inanna knows that going into the underworld is a risky endeavor. Inanna does not rule the underworld. Her sister does. So in that realm, Inanna, even though she is so powerful, she risks death, because in Ereshkigal's territory, it is Ereshkigal that is the queen. She is the one who decides the fate of every single person who enters. So actually entering into the underworld is a very risky and uncertain process. When Inanna arrived at the palace Ganzer, she pushed aggressively on the door of the underworld. She shouted aggressively at the gate of the underworld, "Open up, doorman! Open up! Open up, Nettie! Open up! I am all alone and I want to come in." Because at this point, she sent her assistant off. She sent her vizier off. So she really is all alone. She's knocking, she's knocking, she's knocking. And Nettie, who is the kind of like the assistant of Ereshkigal, the one who oversees the whole situation, because Ereshkigal's not going to go pick up the door. So Nettie is the one who's going to be in charge of like announcing Inanna's arrival to Ereshkigal, who sits in her throne of the underworld. Nettie, the chief doorman of the underworld, answered holy Inanna, "Who are you?" And Inanna says, "I am Inanna, going to the east." And he responds, "If you're Inanna going to the east, why have you traveled to the land of no return? How did you set your heart on the road whose traveler never returns?" No one ever returns from the underworld. So why would Inanna think that she's different, that she has a different fate? So Nettie says, "Stay here, Inanna. I will speak to my mistress, Ereshkigal, and I will tell her what you have said." Because Inanna tells him, "I'm here because Lord Gudulgana, the husband of my elder sister, has died. In order to have his funeral rites observed, she offers generous libations at his wake. That is the reason." So it turns out Ereshkigal's husband has died. And she says, "I'm here because I would like to pay my respects and offer libations to the dead." So then he says, "Okay, I'll let her know. Let's just see what he says." So he goes to Inanna and he says, "My mistress, there's a lone girl outside. It is Inanna, your sister, and she has arrived at the palace. She pushed aggressively on the door of the underworld. She shouted aggressively at the gate of the underworld. She has abandoned Inanna and has descended to the underworld. She has taken the 7 divine powers." Don't think that the Ereshkigal hasn't noticed. "She has collected the divine powers and grasped them in her hands. She has come on her way with all the good divine powers. She has put a turban. She has taken a wig. She has hung small lapis lazuli beads around her neck. She has placed twin egg-shaped beads on her breast," and so on and so forth. We've already listed the 7 elements. When she heard this, Ereshkigal slapped the side of her thigh. She bit her lips and took the words to heart. Ereshkigal does not like the sound of this. She said to Nettie, "Come, Nettie, my chief doorman of the underworld. Don't neglect the instructions I will give you. Let the 7 gates of the underworld be bolted, then let each door of the palace be opened separately. As for her, after she has entered and crouched down and had her clothes removed, they will be carried away." So she basically told Nettie, bolt all the doors, but then you're going to open each door separately. So not all the doors are going to open at the same time. They're going to open separately, one at a time. And she instructs Nettie that every time she goes through the door, 1 item of her 7 divine powers will be removed. So by the end of it, she is completely naked, prostrated in front of her sister at the throne. So ultimately, Ereshkigal does actually allow for Inanna to enter. I think Ereshkigal is curious to know what the hell is going on and why she's coming in equipped and armed with 7 divine powers. So we're not going to read every single line of the 7 divine powers, but let's take a look at the first one. He said to holy Inanna, "Come on, Inanna, and enter." So this is after the first gate. Then he tells her, "Enter." When Inanna entered, the turban, headgear for the open country, was removed from her head. What is this? Inanna's confused. Be satisfied, Inanna. A divine power of the underworld has been fulfilled. Inanna, you must not open your mouth against the rights of the underworld. So Neti is telling her, these are the rights. You want to come in, you have to play by your own rules. And the rules that Ereshkigal has put in place is that that item is going to be removed. Inanna, you can't question that. So same thing happens when she enters the second gate. The small lapis lazuli beads were removed from her neck. And Inanna says, what is this? Again, he tells her the same thing. Be satisfied, Inanna. A divine power of the underworld has been fulfilled. Inanna, you must not open your mouth against the rights of the underworld. So again, you can start seeing like the incantation aspect of this poem. It's meant to be spoken and felt and repeated. So on and so forth. She goes through the 3rd gate, the 4th gate, the 5th gate, 6th gate, 7th gate. The last gate, they remove the dress from her body, the pala, the garment of ladyship. And she's made to crouch down, completely naked. The Anuna, the 7 judges, rendered their decision against her. They looked at her, it was the look of death. They spoke to her, it was the speech of anger. They shouted at her, it was the shout of heavy guilt. The afflicted woman was turned into a corpse, and the corpse was hung on a hook. So as soon as she arrives, crouched down at the feet of Ereshkigal, Ereshkigal rises. She puts Inanna to the test, like puts her on the throne, has all these people, the judges judging her, judges, because remember, this is Ereshkigal, she's in her territory. So she has these 7 judges judge her, shout at her, be mad at her, and eventually pronounce her dead. So basically, Inanna's dead upon arrival, and she's turned into a corpse. Inanna's dead. As soon as Inanna dies, the world above ground starts changing. The birds stop chirping. People stop making children. Fertility is dead. The trees stop growing. Things become really somber above ground because Inanna, the queen of birthing, fertility, growth, nature, is dead. So who's there to take care of that now? Nobody. After 3 days and 3 nights had passed, her minister carried out the instructions of her mistress. She did what Inanna told her. She made a lament for herself. She beat the drum for her in the sanctuaries. She made the round of the houses of the gods for her. She lacerated her eyes for her. She lacerated her nose. Like a pauper, she clothed herself in a single garment, and all alone she set her foot into the house of Enlil. And long story short, she tells Enlil, don't let young lady Inanna be killed in the underworld. Please, please help her. She begs him. Enlil is furious. He's super pissed. He's like, my daughter craved the great heaven, and she craved the great below as well. The divine powers of the underworld are divine powers which should not be craved. For whoever gets them must remain in the underworld. Who, having got to that place, could then expect to come again? So Enlil is incredulous. Like, she knows that if she goes down there, she can't come up. She's always been the kind of person who craves everything. She craves the heavens, she craves the underworld, and like, look at where that got her. So Father Enlil did not help in this matter. He is furious. So she goes to another god. She goes to Urim. So she enters Urim, this is the house of Nana, and she lamented before Nana, Father Nana, don't let your daughter be killed in the underworld. In his rage, Father Nana answered the same thing that Father Enlil said. How could she crave the powers of the underworld? She knows full well that no one returns from the underworld. I'm not going to help with this matter. So after failing to get any sympathy or help from Father Nana and from Father Enlil, the assistant tries her luck with Father Enki. And Father Enki is very distraught at the news that Inanna has been basically killed by her sister Ereshkigal after entering into the underworld. He is very upset, like the other gods, but he decides to help. So this is what he starts saying. What has my daughter done? She has me worried. What has Inanna done? She has me worried. What has the mistress of all the lands done? She has me worried. And he keeps saying she has me worried multiple times, but he decides to help in the matter. He takes from the tip of his fingernail some dirt, and he creates a life-giving plant. He takes another piece of dirt from his fingernail and creates a life-giving water. So he has the life-giving plant and the life-giving water, and he says to them, you are going to go into the underworld, and you're going to behave like flies. I want you to be imperceptible. You're going to flit past the door. You're going to go through the door hinges. And when you get to Ereshkigal, you're going to notice that she is in bad shape. Let me describe you. Her holy shoulders are not covered by a linen cloth. Her breasts are not full like a vessel. Her nails, something's up with her nails. The hair on her head is bunched up as if it were leeks. So I had to research this because I was like, what the hell is going on? It turns out Ereshkigal is in labor and she's in pain. She's going through the pains of labor. And so Father Enki tells the life-giving water and the life-giving plant to comfort her, to support her, to sympathize with her. So he tells them, when she says, oh, my heart, you are to say, you are troubled, our mistress, oh, your heart. When she says, oh, my liver, you are to say, you are troubled, our mistress, oh, your liver. She will then ask, who are you? Speaking to you from my heart to your heart, from my liver to your liver. If you are gods, let me talk with you. If you are mortals, may a destiny be decreed for you. So Father Enki is anticipating what Ereshkigal will tell these creatures. And he tells them, you have to make her swear by heaven and earth. Because if she swears, especially when it comes to like a destiny being decreed, if she swears, she has to hold her promise. So they follow the instruction. They follow every single bit of it. They go through the doors like flies. They go through the door hinges like phantoms, and they get to Ereshkigal. She's in labor, and they're supporting her. She's complaining, my liver, my heart, and they support her. And they say, oh, mistress, we feel, whatever, your liver is my liver, supporting her. Father Enki warned them, as a sign of gratitude, Ereshkigal will offer you a river full of water. Don't accept it. They will offer you a field with grain. Don't accept it. So Ereshkigal is going to say, well, what do you want? What can I give you in gratitude to thank you for having supported me and empathized with me? Father Enki tells them, at this moment, you shall ask for the corpse of Inanna, and she will have to give it to you because she made a promise to offer you something in exchange. So when they ask for the corpse hanging on the hook, Inanna says, that is the corpse of our queen, of your queen. And so Enki instructed to them to say, whether it is that of our king, whether it is that of our queen, give it to us. And Enki guarantees she will give you the corpse hanging on the hook. And so she does. That is true. Ereshkigal gives the corpse that is hanging on the hook. And one of you will sprinkle the life-giving plant force, and the other one of you will sprinkle the life-giving water force, and Inanna will come back to life. That was the ruse. Ereshkigal didn't know that these were life-giving plants and water, and that they were going to bring Inanna back to life. But of course it doesn't go so easily for Inanna, who is now brought back from the dead. She's arisen. She's no longer a corpse. She's alive again. This is incredibly unusual because no one who goes into the underworld ever returns. Remember? Father Nana, Father Enlil, they were like, what the hell is she thinking? Why is she craving the powers of the underworld? She's never going to come out. But yet, Father Enki helped, and now she's back. So it doesn't go so easy because remember those 7 judges, the 7 demons, the Ajuna? They come in, they swoop in, they're angry, and they're like, not so easy. We will allow you to leave here, but it's going to have to be one life for one life. You are going to have to substitute your exit with another life. Inanna has no choice but to agree. She has to leave. So the Ajuna, those demons, they accompany her as she begins to make her exit from the underworld. And again, it's the same procession. She goes through door by door. And the Inanna who's revived, albeit alive, she is very weak from that corpse situation that she was in. And as she goes through every door, she gains more and more strength. As she regains every single item of her regalia, she becomes stronger and stronger. So first she gets her dress back, and then by the end of it, she gets her turban. She gets the headgear that she was wearing. And at that point, she is powerful. She is strong because she got her divine powers back. All the 7 divine powers that she had taken with her ambition to conquer the underworld. She's now exited with them again. And on her path back to the palace, she runs into her assistant and her family, her sons. And they are, as she had instructed, in mourning. They're upset, they're genuinely crying and wailing and hitting themselves because they're so sad that the goddess Inanna has been eaten by the underworld. So as Inanna comes back, she's pleased. She's pleased to see that her assistant is mourning her. She makes her way back to the palace. And there she sees a sight that she did not expect. Her lover, her husband, Dumuzi, who is also a god, is sitting on the throne wearing magnificent clothing and seemingly unaffected by the departure of Inanna. And of course, Inanna is furious. She's like, are you kidding me? I died and you did not affect you at all? And so she told the demons around her, take him. You're looking for a life? Take that asshole. So let's take a look at what the passages say for this story. This follow-up, this chapter 2 of Inanna's rise, right? We oftentimes focus on the descent, but it's super interesting, especially for our analysis that's forthcoming. It's important to actually know what happens after. She ended up at the great apple tree in the plain of Kulaba. There was Dumuzi, clothed in magnificent garment and seated magnificently on a throne. The demons seized him there by his thighs. The 7 of them poured the milk from his churns. The 7 of them shook their heads, and they would not let the shepherd play his pipe any further. Inanna looked at him. It was the look of death. She spoke to him. It was the speech of anger. She shouted at him. It was the shout of heavy guilt. How much longer? I.e., how dare you? How dare you sit there, unaffected by my departure. Take him away, she says. Holy Inanna gave Dumuzi, the shepherd, into their hands, the hands of the Arjuna, the hands of the demons. And the poem here is describing the demons and is basically saying, those who had come for Dumuzi, the demons who had come for Dumuzi, they know no food, no drink. They eat no flower offering, drink no libation. They never enjoy the pleasures of the marital embrace, never have any sweet children to kiss. They snatch the son from a man's knee. They make the bride leave the house of her father-in-law. They don't give a shit. They're horrible demons, right? So they snatch the shepherd. Dumuzi is crying and he's so pale. He raises his hands to the heavens, to his brother-in-law, the god Utu. And he says, Utu, you are my brother-in-law. I am your relation by marriage. I brought butter to your mother's house. I brought milk to Ningal's house. Turn my hands into snakes' hands and turn my feet into snakes' feet so I can escape my demons. Let them not keep hold of me because they're holding him by his limbs. Utu accepts his request and turns his hands and feet into snakes' hands and feet. And he does escape the demons in that moment. But not so fast. The demons, they know how to get Dumuzi if they want Dumuzi. So the story ends with the sister of Dumuzi volunteering herself and saying, I know you need someone to go into the underworld. Please take me and let my brother be. So Geshe-Inanna's Dumuzi's sister, the agreement that ends up happening is that for 6 months of the year, it's Geshe-Inanna who ends up being in the underworld. And then for the other 6 months, it's Dumuzi. Inanna got away with it in the end. She did not have to go back to the underworld at any point. In the next video, we're really going to unpack all the different themes, the themes of descent, of transformation, of ascent, the themes of compromise, the conflict and the duality between life and death, the fusion, the melding between life and death that takes place in this myth. So we're going to explore all these things, and I'm going to also connect it with the ways in which it gets used as shadow work in contemporary dominant spirituality. So stay tuned for the next video. Hopefully you enjoyed this really deep dive exploration into the story as well as detail with some original readings from the original tale. So thank you for watching. Really appreciate it. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you for the next video.